you're insuring yourself against the fact that energy prices will continue to rise.
We seal that house from where that foam touches the OSB, doing a really nice job of that and really sealing the whole house. I'd love for them to come back to you and say, man, we had a house half this size and it costs twice as much to heat in the wintertime, TJ. How in the world are you and your team doing it?
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Barndo Show. On today's episode, I got my good friend Steve Click with me here with All-in-One Insulation, and we want to just kind of peel back the top and get some expert opinions on why we insulate the way we insulate, what are some common practices around the country when it comes to building in general, and then what are some of the advantages to some of the different types of insulation and why we ended up doing what we do. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate being here.
So super excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your company and where you're from and all that good stuff.
So right here in the upstate, we are a private equity group owned company that has about 29 locations now. We've grown leaps and bounds in the last few years, but I think we've done that because we're very entrepreneurial based and really put good people in the market and try to connect with great people like yourself and your company, and try to put good people on our team. So we service the upstate, a little bit of North Carolina, a little bit of Georgia. And then we get towards the coast. We're in Columbia with you guys today.
Yeah. We always push the envelope. Hey, Steve,
That's
can
right.
you go here?
That's right.
Can you go here? Can you please go here?
You make it hard to say no. We're honored to be part of it. So
No, you were really clutch for us, too. You came in when we opened our Somerville office, and you're like, that's not an area I service, but I'll find someone. And you did, and the rest is history, and it's been great. So I appreciate that. So a little backstory here on how we met. It's kind of a crazy world. So I kind of come from the insulation world a little bit, and I don't even remember what year it was. It was several years ago. We were in Phoenix, Arizona, or Mesa, Arizona, at a Insulation Contractors Association event, and I was at the airport trying to hail an Uber, and he was getting one. He's like, "Where are you going?" I'm same place, and so we hopped in an Uber together, and then realized we're from the same city, in the same environment, and it was just kind of strange. And then
I'm in Phoenix, and I go, "Where are you from?" And he says, "Greenville, South Carolina." And I went, "There's no way." It was cool.
It was meant
great.
to be, man.
Yeah.
So and then, years later, this thing spun up, and I reached out to you and was like, "Hey, man, we got this Barndo thing going, and we need a good insulation partner." And, the rest is kind of history there. It's kind of funny to look back and see how that connection was made. We met in Mesa, and both from Greenville. But
It was the best Uber ride I've ever paid for in my life.
yeah, you did. You covered it. You were like, "I got you."
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. You baited the hook good on that one. You're
That's
like, "This will
right.
come back sometime."
TJ doesn't know it. I've been stalking him for 2 years before that day. So.
So I just kind of want to do a little bit of a deep dive. We do things a certain way, and a lot of times people, they make a decision or they jump into something because they're thinking like, well, that's what everybody else is doing. And so I've always been a little bit of like a rule breaker, or like I push up against the edges a little bit, and I want to understand why. And so, my personal preference, I've always been like a blown in blanket kind of guy. Like I championed that for years. Like I literally drove all around the country talking about the advantage of that system. But when it came to barndominiums and the way we were building and things like that, and kind of the evolution of when we started to where we are today, we kind of broke it down and realized spray foam was probably the best option to achieve what we're trying to do, which was a really high quality home, but also try to hit an affordable price bracket. And so we kind of fell on spray foam. And in the beginning, we came to you, and I think the first 3 or 4 you did was all closed cell spray foam. And you just came to me and you're like, well, "DJ, why the hell are you doing closed cell?"
Yeah.
And we kind of had that conversation, and then you queued us up on some advantages of open cell and what we would have to do differently if we were to lean into open cell. And so we kind of came there. So one of the major differences for us was in barndominiums, a lot of times if you're building post frame, you're putting your girders up, and then you're attaching your metal straight to the girder. And so you have exposed metal on the inside, or metal with a house wrap and then a girder. And so you're always spraying in contact with metal. So that's why a lot of people opt for a closed cell, because it'll kind of bind to that metal and
Sure.
and create that. And so one thing that we changed was we started sheeting all of our homes with OSB prior to the house wrap. And what that did was gave us that wood barrier there so that we could apply open cell.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of speak into some of the advantages of open cell? And
sure.
You've been on so many of our projects, so I just let you run for a minute.
Well, and I'll tell you, we've had that conversation with others that really tried to avoid the cost of the sheathing. And they weren't necessarily concerned with the best solution, but what was traditional for them. And we heard everything from, boy, that, the metal's so loud and the closed cell's so loud. When we sat with you and your team, we talked about sound absorption and how quiet that open cell is. And with that sheathing in there, it gives us that layer of protection that we're not spraying to that metal. And so in zone 3 of the climate zone, we're able to do that in the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, which is where we work with you guys predominantly. Good Lord, by the time this airs, you'll probably be in Florida and Virginia and Maryland, but we'll talk about that next week, I guess. But it really is. It's the best solution. I've been a blown-in blanket fan. I've been a fiberglass guy since I got in this industry more than 30 years ago, and was so concerned with fiberglass or with spray foam when it first came out. I think that uneducated applicators were out there a little reckless doing what they were doing. And so our company really, really tries to empower our installers. We get those guys certified. We work very closely with our vendor partners, and we work with many different spray foam vendors. But we try to do what you're doing. We rub the edge and get as close as we can and continue to try to be innovative. And so when we get those questions from folks like yourselves that say, listen, I don't want to build a home for someone that down the road, they say it's so loud every time the wind blows heavy or it rains or anything else. What else can we do? And our job is not to tell you how to build the house, but it was great that you and your team asked those questions.
Well, I can appreciate that perspective, because even on this, like, it's kind of self-serving if I just get up here and answer why we do what we do. And I want to bring in an expert on insulation so you can kind of speak to some of that. So
sure.
It's not just TJ came up with this idea or the Barndo code just went this way because it was the cheapest option or anything like that. But when we asked those questions, you did the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I remember I asked a couple questions. A couple days later, you called and were like, hey, I've got manufacturer partners coming in town. We're going to come to your place, set up shop. You guys brought in some food, fed us, and literally sat down and broke down every possible solution from a spray foam perspective, and then showed like cost savings to the homeowners with a spray foam system versus fiberglass bat. And again, I'm not casting shade. Somebody's budget constrains them to have to do fiberglass. It is doable.
Yep.
But we try to set a standard in what we offer to the community, and we want to everything, even our standard grade, we want to be above average.
Absolutely.
So when you brought that in, so talk a little bit about like your experience coming into Barndominiums and doing that, and like what you think the biggest difference between what we're doing and what a lot of your business is, because you don't just work for us, you work
sure.
for a lot of people.
We've insulated quite a few, and we've done blown-in blanket, we've done a bunch of fiberglass, we've done some closed cell, and we've done some open cell. That sheathing is really what changed the game for your company, and I've seen a couple others do that as well. But it allows us to work with that open cell foam, really give an air barrier right there at the OSB or at the sheathing, not have to have a 6-sided assembly like you do with fiberglass. And anytime we're talking about posts, and whether it's an 8-inch space, a 6-inch space, or a 4-inch space, the other thing from a structural standpoint, you guys are building 2x6. And then, we're spraying the roof deck and the walls. So really, really pushing the envelope on what folks are normally looking at when you talk about a traditional stick-built home.
Right. And for me, I always try to put myself in the frame of mind, like if I was building for myself, what would I want? And some of the things I want is high energy efficiency. Most of our builds have enormous cathedrals in the living areas.
They do indeed.
I've got several calls from your people. The first few y'all went to, you're like, how the heck are we supposed to get up there?
Sure.
So when you have these giant cathedrals and you're moving that much air with your HVAC, it pays to play and take that step and do a full encapsulation, a full envelope of spray foam.
Absolutely.
So like in your experience, if someone was sitting there and they're debating a cost saving strategy of, do I do this now and just go ahead and do the spray foam, or do I lean into a bat because it's potential cost savings on the front end? What would be your advice there?
It'd definitely be to encapsulate the entire house. When you look at the cost savings on being able to downsize that HVAC unit, not put as much tonnage in there, but also put that HVAC unit inside the envelope so it's not working like the others do. I remember getting into an attic, one of the first spray foam attics that I entered, and I went, wow, this is, 78 degrees or something in the summertime versus my attic previously that had blown an insulation in it. And it was, in the summertime, 130, 140 degrees. And so much different. I thought about how that mechanical work was run and how hard it had to work to pump out that hot, humid air and get it out of the system. I think encapsulation does a lot. It does a lot for indoor air quality. It does a ton for comfort. And then, of course, energy efficiency and that cost savings makes a whole lot of sense as well. So when you're looking at the big picture and living in that house or a 30-year mortgage, your return on investment is pretty fantastic.
I tell people all the time, this is one thing you won't see, but what I know to be true being in construction and remodeling is when you buy a home, chances are in 10 years, you're going to remodel a bathroom, you're going to remodel a kitchen, you're going to repaint. You don't re-insulate.
No, one time.
Yeah, it's a one-time thing. So on the front end, if you're looking to try to find cost savings, I try my best, and our team does a great job of trying to push people and steer people away from looking at the insulation as a potential cost savings. Sometimes when we run into garages and stuff like that, we can look at different strategies. But one thing you said earlier was zone, and you talked about the specific zone that we're in. So I want to be very clear about something. We're experts at building barndominiums in South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of Georgia. We're in Tennessee now. And some of that, as we get up in that Tennessee, that zone starts shifting into certain areas in the mountains. There's one little nook in North Carolina that's in a different. Speaking of zones a little bit, so we can make sure, if you're listening and you're in Minnesota, right, what's true here may not be true for you.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, we're in climate zone 3 when it comes to the Department of Energy, bordering into 4 once we get into Tennessee. And I oversee our Nashville market as well, and I've seen a lot of change there in code and some of the other things when it comes to our values and the way homes are insulated there. We see a lot more closed cell there in crawl spaces and things. You're certainly building on slabs for the most part with the barndominiums, but on the custom home side of things, we see a lot of closed cell being applicated in crawl spaces and basements in climate zone 4. And when you talk about climate zone 5, the Minnesota and all of those areas, you really don't have the opportunity to utilize open cell there. You're kind of forced to put in closed cell foam.
Right. And that's where you start seeing some of those hybrid applications, right?
Yep.
They'll flash closed cell and then go in with rock wool, or do a bibs system where it's, 2 inches of closed cell and then they net and blow the rest of it to fill that whole cavity.
Sure. Well, you're sealing that envelope, right? So anytime you're putting spray foam on, again, you end up getting your air barrier right at the OSB or the sheathing, rather than in a fiberglass application where you have to have a 6-sided assembly, and that air barrier is actually when the drywall is touching the insulation. That is not the case when it comes to open cell spray foam or closed cell spray foam.
Now, diving back into where we are here in the Carolinas, zone 3.
Mm-hmm.
What is the requirement for insulation? It's pretty low.
It is. So we currently have to meet the 2009 IECC code. And it baffles me a little bit, but, there's newer energy codes out there as recent as a 2021 energy code, right? I went by a Chevy dealer on the way here and I didn't see any brand new 2009s. So it kind of blows me away that's where, our leaders in our industry says we need to be as far as the thermal envelope on a house. But they're trying to reduce costs, and it makes a whole lot of sense. We don't really get a full 4 seasons, but the other day we're in the 20s, right? In the morning, and then in the 60s in the afternoon. And so we've got to think about all of those temperatures, including being in triple digits in the summertime. So we have to do what makes sense. But yeah, 2009 IECC, I think we're really behind. I've seen Tennessee make leaps and bounds changes. I've seen North Carolina do the same. And let's not even get into Virginia and Maryland, where those codes are quite different than they are here in South Carolina.
Right. Well, and so the main purpose of that is to say, look, the bar's set really low in terms of energy and thermal insulation in South Carolina specifically, but even in the surrounding areas, because we're in an area of the country where people are like, it's not that big a deal, right? But us electing to go in and do this open sale is clearly derived from the position of we know what's best.
Sure.
And so, going into that, and you've always hyped us up and speak all this like incredible praise, which I'm always thankful for. I see you chiming in all the time on our groups and different things about the way we build and the way we insulate, and it makes me feel good because sometimes in your mind you start doing something and you think this is the best way, but if you really didn't ask the question, or if you're just doing it from a cost savings perspective, or you're doing it because, well, that's what everybody else does, you kind of lose focus of what you're really offering.
Yeah.
And so, that for us as a company, it was, why even offer something that's substandard?
I'll tell you, I think one of the things that I've looked at for years is I think we need to look at our houses the same way we look at our vehicles, right? If you could buy that Chevy Tahoe that seats 7 or 8 in it, and it got 62 miles per gallon, you'd go, man, how many of these can I buy? So when we look at fuel consumption and affordability, to go with the bare minimum in a 2009 IECC, which is R13 in the walls and R30 in the ceiling, right? You've got that standard car that's getting crappy gas mileage. And I think our energy providers, don't want to throw anyone's name under the bus, but Duke Energy, but I haven't seen them reduce cost recently at all. So those costs continue to go up. And as we look at our thermal envelope and the footprint that we have in these homes, and let's face it, I've seen some of the smaller plans that you've put together, but for the most part, we build these big, beautiful homes. And that's not to be what we refer to as energy pigs. We don't want to do that. We really want to make a conscious decision. So I love that if you've gone with the best solution, not the most cost effective, but the best solution, it makes a whole lot of sense, because folks aren't going to move into this house for 6 months. They're going to be here for a number of years, and 12 months of year. They don't want to have to get a Christmas card from Duke Energy that says, hey, thanks so much for using so much energy. I'd love for them to come back to you and say, man, we had a house half this size and it costs twice as much to heat in the wintertime, TJ. How in the world are you and your team doing it? That's my goal from the very beginning, and that they're not houses, but they're homes. Yep. We live in them, right? I mean,
100%. Well, and I look at it as it's basically you're insuring yourself against the fact that energy prices will continue to rise, right? Especially as there's a push, and we ain't going to do a deep dive here, but there's different things that come into it. Cost of living, inflation, politics, so many things drive that energy cost.
Yep.
And so if there's something that you could do today that'll potentially save you thousands and thousands of dollars over the life of the home, it just makes sense to me. And I would never want to lead someone, because I could offer a flashy lower sale price by cutting corners. I definitely want to, if I'm stamping my name on it, I want it to be a quality home. So that's,
again, you're going to insulate it one time. Once it's drywalled, we're done and over with. We're not in an old farmhouse. We're not living in a time where no insulation is required. So if you're going to do it, and it's an investment for not only your company, but that homeowner that's going to live there for 30 years, you want to offer them the best that you can. And so
now here's the thing. We lean into our sub partners and contract partners all the time, because we encounter stuff on a daily basis, right? It's ever growing, ever evolving, and we get thrown curveballs. Every municipality is different, and so they're all interpreting the same code, but that's the key word: interpretation, right?
Yep.
And so one of the things that we have had here recently is typically when we build garages or these big shops that are in some of these barndominiums, we always have to insulate that demising wall. But now, like, we've sold some upgrades because people are like, hey, I work out here, I work on my cars in this, or whatever reason, they want that insulated, which again, it's a great idea. A lot of people leave it uninsulated with the plan of, hey, in a couple years, I'll have some cash, I'll come in and insulate. But, when we had people come in and say, hey, I want to insulate this garage, you just did one for us over in Greenville, and I think it's like a 1,100 square foot shop attached to the house. And we spray foam the whole thing. We put our demising wall up, going for the certificate of occupancy. Guy comes back and says, hey, you got exposed spray foam, and there's only 2 solutions: drywall or the
Thermal or ignition barrier. Yep.
Yeah, thermal ignition barrier. So speak a little bit about that. Like when people are thinking about this, like when you put spray foam in, yes, it is a preferred method, right? But if we'd have put craft face bats in there, we'd have been fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because that craft is the ignition barrier, correct? Or am I?
No.
Explain that to me.
So craft paper is certainly flammable, and you'd have an issue there. But code doesn't have, you don't have any problems because it is a quote unquote unconditioned space. Anytime that you're leaving that spray foam exposed, and you might be working in that area, you have to have something that separates the two. And I have a friend in the industry that says you've got to separate the foam from the folks. And so shout out to Mark. And so you either have to have that ignition barrier sprayed over the top, so you don't have to worry about that, or you have to drywall it. And so I love the idea of folks saying, hey, listen, comfort's important to me. I'm going to be working out here. I don't want to run a space heater or smell kerosene or anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and insulate it. And even though it's not heated, it'll, as long as the garage door is closed, I should be just fine. But yeah, it does have to be covered. Same thing with a house. Anytime that you're going from a serviced area where you're servicing mechanicals to a big storage area or anything else, your homes are so large and open that we don't really have to worry about that. And you're drywalling everything, including going all the way up that gable wall in the garage and separating the conditioned space from the unconditioned space. So
yeah, the thermal ignition barrier was a game changer because again, it was it's one of those learning as we go situations where everything and again it's subject to interpretation. So other counties we've done several of these.
Sure,
never had anybody pull that card. This guy's like, got to have it. I called you up in a panic. It was like, I don't want to eat drywall in this whole thing. And you guys came out and sprayed the thermal ignition barrier. Is there any advantage to the thermal ignition barrier over drywall other than maybe potential cost savings? Because it's not a cheap process, but
it's definitely not. For the folks that are going to say, hey, listen, we've got to protect ourselves. And we don't want to go through the expense of drywall. I like the way our foam looks pretty, but it is, it's an A part and a B part that's sprayed, so it's good and lumpy. So a lot of folks end up choosing, well, I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet and drywall it. But in the garage, it's a large reason why a lot of folks have just put traditional fiberglass bat insulation. We work with your sales folks, and I was excited to see them sell some foam out there and get a homeowner that was excited about saying, hey, I'd rather put the best out there as well. But yeah, it was an obstacle that maybe we missed in training or whatever it might be, but we learn from those things and build them in on the next sales process, I'm sure, from your side.
Oh, for sure. No, it's constant evolution, right?
Right.
But, and the cool thing about having that sprayed barrier was some people don't want drywall in their garage.
Sure.
Because it's a garage. I mean, they're like, hey, we're driving ATVs in and out of this thing. We're working on old junk cars out here, like whatever, or your classic car, I'm sorry. And then, but they're like, I'm going to be beating and dinging into the wall, so they might want to go back and put, some kind of plywood up. A lot of guys have us come back in and put metal inside as well, like a white metal. It looks really clean, but gives them the ability to attach different things to the wall, and so that
they can also wash vehicles in there and not have to worry about the water hitting that metal, and it's going to fall right to the ground and hopefully go into a drain, right?
Yeah. So that was just a really cool thing that we encountered, and I don't think a lot of the world even knows that is a thing. So if you're building and you're going to have some exposed foam, you need to be asking the question about thermal insulation barrier, right?
Different code municipalities will require different things.
Yep. So one of the other things when you do spray foam and you get people that are from, the older school or like that were around when spray foam kind of broke on the scene, right? Was you walk in, houses smell really bad. It's got this odor and then like it's stuffy and they're like, you're sealing the house up and that's a negative. When reality is it's a positive. But the way you combat that negative is by pumping in fresh air and creating a circulation. And so talk a little bit about that.
So an ERV is something that your HVAC mechanical guy is going to do. We're experts when it comes to spray foam, but certainly not delving into the HVAC market or roofing or framing or anything else. Energy recovery ventilator is put in, and it basically allows us to really tighten that house up. I think the biggest misconception about spray foam, and I've heard people say, man, you can make the house too tight. Well, again, in the old days where it leaked like a sieve and it had so many inefficiencies inside the house through duct leakage, as well as all of the openings in the house that allowed that inside air to dissipate. In a ventilated house, we still see quite a few of those today, but we seal that house up very, very, very tightly. In the old days, I remember duct blaster tests and some other depressurizing homes and doing ratings on houses. And they said, man, this house leaks like crazy. We've got to do a better air seal package. We've got to do a better job around doors and windows, all of those things. We seal that house from where that foam touches the OSB, doing a really nice job of that and really sealing the whole house. And that ERV allows you to bring in fresh air from the outside, and then also allows the inside air to dissipate and go outside. So it's working both ways. Keeps that house comfortable. It allows you to have that indoor air quality, but it allows you to also be comfortable and not smell all of those smells that you might have in the past. And so we have a custom builder that did some work recently, has a house and had a few issues with smell, and I went out there and through duct work and some other things, the basement of his home was actually connected to the roof of his home, had some empty attic spaces with blown-in insulation behind it. We did spray foam on the roof deck on this one, but they were connected. This guy had an ATV in the basement. He had gas cans. He had paint, had all kinds of things down there in the basement. And he was getting that odor, but it was because he didn't put anything in there to control that and dissipate that inside air to get it out of the house and bring in fresh air. And we, of course, given him some notes and some options and some things when we did the house. So he's retrofitting that in now to work on that so he doesn't have that smell and the odor. Real happy with the energy and fuel consumption, but that odor was something that really got to him, and it's something that we talk about with you guys because I don't want one of your homeowners to get in that house and go, what in the world is that smell?
Right.
I don't think you're building too many basements, but
no, we do them, but they're few and far between. So something else that we encounter from time to time is interior sound dampening.
Mm-hmm.
And again, opinions are available everywhere. And so, a lot of people, I remember being at the International Builder Show out in Vegas one year, and, Rockwool comes out and they build their booth, and they have this little hallway where you walk in, and it's so loud in the big hall where everybody is, and you get in there and it's quiet. And so they're like, this is how you insulate these partition walls. And it is a great product, but
sure.
Leaning into that, sometimes when we do them, we'll throw like an R13 or something in the wall with just a fiberglass bat, and it accomplishes, for the most part, the same thing. So if someone was thinking about doing an interior sound dampening or anything like that, what is there any advantage to different types of insulation? And, in your own experience, if you're building for yourself, how would you achieve that? Because we get a lot of people now, the world never stops. So you got people that work third shift. They're like, hey, I need my room to be sound dampened when the kids are watching cartoons in the living room. I need to be able to sleep so I can get up and go to work at night. So just speak a little bit about that, because I think there's, again, people read on Facebook and they don't really ask a professional and they don't really get a scientific answer. They just get an opinion and then they run with it.
So sound transmittance class is based off of an assembly itself, right? So if you're talking about a 2x4 exterior interior partition with 1/2 inch on each side as far as drywall, you're not going to get much of a difference between fiberglass and rock wool. So I think that can be a little bit misleading. Anything that you put in that wall is going to help. But I get folks that say, hey, I want to soundproof an area, right? We're around a drum set and guitars and other things. You have to really change how you build that assembly to do anything that even resembles soundproofing an area. But anything that you put in that wall, certainly that R13 bat or even R11 bat, is going to be better than nothing. But if you really want to do something as far as sound deadening, you really have to look at double-sided woven sound walls. There's a number of different changes that you could make to an assembly to really, really do a nice job. But yeah, we carry rock wool, we carry fiberglass bats, and we do some of that in your homes currently. So you get somebody that works over there at BMW, and like you said, they don't want to hear the SpongeBob entrance every 2 hours or every 30 minutes. Gosh.
Well, and so I know another way we've done that in the past is we've had clients where we actually went in and built a demising wall, where, like in commercial construction. So we'd build two 2x4 walls with a 1-inch airspace in the middle.
Perfect.
And build that assembly. So like if we were piecing that together, how would you construct that from an insulation perspective?
Wow. The 1-inch airspace is certainly a big help. And then there's RC1 or resilient channel that you'd put in between. A large part of sound transmission actually goes through the face of that wood stud. So anytime you create separation between or more than one layer, you're really going to allow that sound to be absorbed in that open space in between those two walls. But there's not an answer. I will tell you, so spray foam open cell, which is what you guys are spraying, it has a great sound absorption. I don't think you're building too many of them right on I-85, but we do some custom houses for some builders that are on 85, and had a guy that said, come in here to the house. And I thought, oh boy, what are we looking at? House is not drywalled. I think maybe missing a window or a front door. And he says, can you believe how quiet this house is right now? All from just spray foaming the house. Now, closed cell is a little bit different. Adds some structural integrity to the house, but does not have any sound absorption. So there's a big difference between those.
Oh, when one of the biggest selling features of us going to all open cell was taking clients in. So when they're doing a walkthrough, or sometimes we do these big events, and we take potential clients in, and we'll tour them on a house. And two things happen. In the winter or the summer, the moment they walk in, you can feel the temperature difference. And so like they're like, whoa, because you walk in. I mean, some of these things are like churches when you come in them.
Sure.
Massive ceilings. And they just walk in, and instantly they're like, wow, what a temperature difference. And then the second thing is, like, if it's raining and you got a metal box, it's like people are like, I like that peaceful sound. You better. But when you're going
to live with it.
Yeah. When you put that open cell in there, it blew my mind how much more quiet that is, even in that gable area, like in the cathedral, because in that cathedral, it's 5.5 inches.
Yeah.
And so, the ability for that foam insulation to cancel out that much of the noise is a game changer.
It is.
And so we tell people, like, from just overall comfort, right? We're not just talking straight energy, but overall comfort. Open cell changed the game for us.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Again, adding the other 2 points in indoor air quality, comfort and energy efficiency, it's extremely important. Like you said, you better be comfortable with that sound, because you're going to live with it for as long as you're living in that house. If you're that impressed with it walking into it, I think it could lead to somebody saying, I'm ready to sign a contract with open cell on it. Yep. It is a game changer.
It is. Hey, one more thing that I would like to do, because we do have some studious clients, right? That want to do their research, and they want to dig, and they want to find holes. It's a personality, right? Yeah. Some people are like, I need to find what's wrong with what's being presented. And so we get asked all the time, hey, if you're going to spray open cell in this cathedral and it's 5.5 inches, how are you achieving the overall R value? So I know that when they compute that, like, we overspray in our attic areas, and then we spray and screed that down before we put the drywall up in those gable areas. And so when the insulation inspection happens, it's sprayed over the face of the studs, and then it gets screeded down, and then we're hanging drywall to it. But how does that whole thing work, where this area is sprayed a little more dense than what's required, this area is sprayed 5.5 inches, so that whole house checks out?
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is, how are we getting away with spraying 5.5 inches in there as opposed to 10 or 12? And you really look at our value is resistance value, right? So that's resisting what is on the outside coming on the inside. So in the summertime, especially, you've got that extreme heat, and you want to keep it out, and you don't want that HVAC system to continue to work and work and work. The difference when we look at our return on investment from going from 5.5 inches to 10 inches of spray foam. And again, we're talking about, I want to say 3.8 R values per inch, right? We're certainly not achieving an R38 or an R49 or anything like that in the attic. The biggest difference is that we're sealing that house so that we're not allowing it to infiltrate and try to stop it somewhere, right? We're not allowing it to get into an attic space and be 140 degrees in there and try to stop it at the top of the drywall somewhere, especially in those big, large cathedral ceilings. ceilings that you're talking about, we're putting 5.5 inches in there, sometimes a little bit more than that. My guys are, it's an A side and a B side, and we're spraying it a little heavy here and there. But the performance is really what you're looking for. And to go from that 5.5 to 10 inches, cost associated is dramatic, obviously, but the performance is very, very minimal.
Right. Well, so the biggest thing here is if you're going to build, regardless of what it is, but specifically a barndominium, don't lean into just whatever everyone's saying in Facebook chatter. It's not that they're wrong or right. It's just there's a lot that goes into this equation. One is, where are we building? What are we building? And what does the total system look like once we're done?
Yeah.
You've mentioned it several different times, like, hey, we're putting this type of insulation in, but that's possible because of the type of sheathing that we put in, which is the type of air barrier, and then what type of mechanicals are going in and having an ERV, all these different things. They all are working in sync to provide that finished product. So super thankful that you came on here to share some of that and like give some of that insight from your perspective as being in the insulation game for 30 plus years. I mean, like, it's a wealth of knowledge. Every time I get around you, I feel like I'm a little bit smarter, but the biggest thing is like, when we get asked a question, I don't shoot from the hip.
Yep.
I'm going to immediately go and seek out information from you and put together a global strategy to say, okay, if this is true, then these other three things must be true. And that's going to create exactly what people are looking for. And again, I say it all the time. There's a lot of people who build homes. There's a lot of people who build barns. There are not a lot of people who build barn homes, okay? And so taking the construction science of residential building and applying it to an age-old method of construction with post frame, marrying those two together is not as easy as it sounds, and it's not a pre-written script. Now, we're doing a lot to make it easier for the next guy, but it's an ever-evolving game, and it's always changing. So, again, your team's been fantastic. You guys have came in and solved this Rubik's Cube with us more than once, so very thankful for that.
Thanks, TJ. We appreciate it, and I appreciate the kind words.
All right, so this next part of the episode is what we call barn burner, right? And this is questions that come to us straight from our Facebook groups, through social media, and it's real consumers asking real questions. And so we have a couple of these. So I'm going to throw you some curveballs to see how you do.
All right.
All right, here we go. So the first question that we have here is, why do you typically not insulate interior walls?
Well, I mean, it doesn't save you any energy or anything else. It's a preference. We certainly do. I think we covered it a little bit ago, and we have the ability to do that. And I know that your sales team offers that. So commonly isn't required by code. And some people don't have children that are watching SpongeBob, so they're fine with sleeping without it. I think a standard drywalled wall without any without any sound transmittance or insulation in that interior cavity performs just fine. But there are others that are light sleepers that might say, man, we've got to put something in that wall. So it's not code is probably the best response to that question.
Yeah, and from just an energy perspective, like, the goal is to keep hot out, keep cold out, or keep cold in and keep heat in. But that's happening on the exterior shell, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
the thermal
roof,
envelope,
the exterior walls, it's kind of like your cooler, right?
Yep.
So it's insulated all the way around, but inside's open, so we can put beer in there.
Yeah. Yeti coolers are making a big, splash for one reason. They keep it cool or keep that heat away from the ice and do a great job. Open cell spray foam, by the way, on those.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We try to model after that success, right? Let's see here. What's another one? So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but like in typical for what we do, right? Uh-huh. So put your brain in that frame. How thick are we spraying on walls and ceilings and roof decks?
So I mentioned earlier that we do not have to have a 6-sided assembly. So even on your 2x6 exterior walls, you're installing 3.5 to 4 inches on those partitions, but you're sealing that envelope completely from top to bottom, side to side. So 5.5 inches in the roof deck, and then 3.5 to 4 inches in the exterior walls.
What about some of those areas? Because we did have one up in somewhere up in kind of that western North Carolina top of Western North Carolina, where we put 2x8s in the roof deck to spray it so that we could hit that next energy code or whatever it was. But we intentionally made it thicker.
Sure. The interpretation of by code municipality drives that for the most part. There are many parts in the Highlands and Franklin and those areas where they're requiring 7 inches of spray foam, some even just a little bit more. And so we always want to make sure that we're code compliant. We're very, very lucky to work with a couple of manufacturers that offer continuous education points for some seminars that we do. We work very closely with code officials to try to educate them on what's changing in the spray foam industry and what we're doing as an applicator differently than we did in the past to make sure that we are not only keeping our employees safe, but that we're getting consistency in those walls and in those roof decks on job sites.
Awesome. Good stuff. And then, all right, so this is a pretty long one. Let's read through it. It says, what I need to know from you guys is if you blew your attic rather than spray foamed it. If so, would there be condensation issues? If you did spray foam, how thick did you go? We just kind of covered that. And I've also heard that if you do a closed cell that you need a blown-in attic for ventilation. So that's a whole lot of meat there. So it says, if we were to blow the attic rather than spray foam it, would we have condensation? That's the first part of the question. And the second question is, they've always heard that if you do a closed cell perimeter, that you need to blow the attic with fiberglass for ventilation, which I think you could debunk both of those.
Yeah, we definitely, if we're going to encapsulate or seal that attic space and bring that HVAC system inside, we're, again, keeping those unconditioned temperatures from the outside to the inside. Would you have some condensation issues? I think you definitely could with a metal pan roof. Now, you guys are using sheathing, so it's a little bit different. You could blow in an R30 in there, and I think you'd be okay. Certainly wouldn't perform as well, and that mechanical system would certainly have to work a lot harder. But we're encapsulating that entire attic space, and so I wouldn't want any ventilation. I wouldn't want any hot, moist air going into that attic space. So we don't want that ridge vent open. We don't want any gable vents, and we don't want any soffit vents open. We want to encapsulate and bring in that fresh air where we want to bring it in and allow that air to dissipate in both directions rather than allowing Mother Nature to do so.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that question about if I close cell my walls and then I do blown in my attic, it sounds like the strategy there was to be cost effective.
Yeah. It'd be backwards though, because obviously we realize heat rises, right? And so that attic space is far more important. I see some big, beautiful homes, even, custom homes on the lake where they want to talk about our value in exterior walls. And they've got a wall that has 900 square foot of glass on it because they want to look at the lake and it's absolutely gorgeous. Or gosh, in your case, maybe they want to look at a countryside or a pasture or their farm. Those are all fantastic, but the rating, the U rating on those and the window is going to be probably an R3.5. So I don't know how cost effective that would be on the exterior wall space.
Right.
I definitely wouldn't recommend it.
It all goes back to building science.
It does.
I appreciate you showing up here and taking those off the cuff, and as always, delivering a very specific answer. Again, you're a wealth of knowledge. And if people were in a market you service, you said you guys are in all these different areas. Like how do they find you and the SEI group and everything that you guys do?
Go to our website, SEIbuildingsolutions.com. And I want to say we're in 13 different states now. And we really listen to the voice of our customer and have been pulled into Texas and Florida and different locations. We have a different DBA, or we're doing business as different there, but all of our locations are very entrepreneurial driven, try to find a good quality solution for our builder and developer partners and work with great vendors to provide the best products to put in those homes.
We have a lot of builders that listen. So if you're looking for someone that has a wealth of knowledge and can help you solve this puzzle in your own market, do reach out. You guys have been phenomenal for us.
Thanks so much. We appreciate the kind words.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Barndo Show podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this content, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And then be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at the Barndo Co. Super simple to find us. And then when you're ready to dive in a little more, maybe look around some of our available floor plan options, or take a look at the gallery of our work, or maybe you're ready to connect with our team and explore what it looks like to build your dream barndominium, you can visit us online at thebarndoco.com.